Hello again, soon to be homeowners. Welcome back to the First Time Home Buying Guide video series. I'm Matt, and I'm excited to be your guide through this journey to owning your very first home. All right, in this episode, part 4, we are going to go over that last critical piece that kind of comes down to that loan approval stage. In this section, we're going to go over the assets. Now, assets are usually one of the most difficult pieces for us to kind of keep a hold of. And it is this, there's so many more moving pieces when it comes down to some of our asset statements. And this is what can make it very tricky. So we want to make sure we spend some time going over the different types of assets, what some of the pitfalls may be around some of those items, and what some best practices to do. So let's get started and let's kind of go over how assets can affect your loan approvals. Assets are really your funds to close is a lot of the terminology that a lender is going to look at that. And it's, down payment and your closing costs. All right, so let's talk about some of the types of assets. It could be quite a few different things that you may have or we could look at. Some traditional things are like checking accounts or savings accounts, money market accounts. You may have stocks or bonds. All of these are traditional types of forms of assets that we can kind of look at. You may get into retirement accounts. Maybe we may look at a 401k or an IRA. And we may not need to use those funds, but we may take those funds, and we'll kind of talk about this at the end, and use this as reserves. Now, there's also types of gift funds. You can get gift funds. Many first-time home buyer programs will allow a family member to gift you money for your transaction. Cash on hand. Now, this is something, if you've got stacks of cash sitting under a mattress or in a safe, it's not that you can't use that, but we want to make sure that we advise the lender that this is where some funds are coming from. And then I'll finish this section with a little bit about crypto. Can I use crypto funds? Yes, you can, but there's a process, and we want to make sure that you know how that works. All right, so let's just kind of jump into the traditional pieces like the checking accounts, the savings accounts, money markets, stocks or bonds. Those are usually managed by a bank or a financial institution where you can get some type of traditional statement. They want to see 2 months of statements or 60 days of asset statements to show the consistency or what's kind of going into those accounts. They don't really look at too much of what's coming out. They may look and see if you have any patterns of an additional payment that's not reflected on your credit statement. When you get into stocks or bonds, if you're going to use those for your funds to close, there is a liquidation process that comes into play because those are going to be affected by the market, and it usually takes a little bit of time to get those funds out. So you want to make sure that you discuss that with the lender. Retirement accounts. Now, this is something that we see utilized quite often, not only for funds to close, but for the reserve account. So let's just talk about what a reserve account is. Let's say you have a monthly mortgage payment of $2,000 and you had $10,000 left in a retirement account after closing. Well, an underwriting team or a lender's guidelines may look at that you have 5 months of reserves in an account behind you, and that strengthens some of your loan quality. So reserve accounts can help maybe take something that's not getting approved and approves. What a good lender should do is look at all these assets. You really want to use your lender as a filter. Show them all these types of things, and they'll also learn how to pare things out that they don't need. Now, 401ks are very popular for using funds to close. There should be what is called a terms of withdrawal or a summary plan description. And those will kind of verify in writing if you can take funds, borrow from your 401k to purchase a primary home. It's a great way to leverage one asset to get into another. Now, on gift funds, you want to make sure that you are kind of keeping a couple pieces in place here. It needs to be a family member. If it's not a family member, maybe it's a fiance, a close family member, those types of people, we want to really make sure that we are using people that are within those requirements that the lenders are going to have, that it is a family member. Now, with the transfer of funds, what we traditionally advise, if we can, if it's possible, is have the donor give you that money through a wire directly to title about 2 days before you go to closing. So we go through the whole process, get everything signed off on, loans approved, you're finished, you're ready to go to closing. That's when we have a donor send those funds directly to the title company. This will limit some of the documentation requirement for that donor. It may only require that they just show a copy of the wire statement that they sent directly to title. If you deposit those funds, or they feel more comfortable giving you those funds, there is a paper trail that's required. Let's talk with the lender, make sure that we get the donor involved on that early so they know what's required of them as well. All right, we'll finish up with the last two here, which is cash on hand and crypto. So cash on hand is really, hey, I've got, funds sitting at home. I want to, it's more than 50% of what my qualifiable income is. And I've been saving that because I've just been trying to put a little different savings account away. That's fine. But we want to talk about how to get those funds into your bank account in the proper channels to make sure it documents correctly. Sometimes we may look at some alternative ideas on how to do that depending on what the size of the funds are. Just walking into title with a large stack of cash is not something that an investor or a lender is going to allow happen. So let's make sure we have that conversation early. Now, crypto is something that is much more prevalent. They will look at crypto statements as to what a value may be. They will not really recognize that crypto funds until those crypto funds are then converted to US dollars. Once they are converted to US dollars, it's an acceptable format. We would show them that we have it in crypto. We would show them that we sold that kind of like a stock and then converted that into cash, but it is an acceptable source. So let me know if you have any questions on that. So this concludes the last section here on those three critical pieces. So we talked about credit, we talked about income, and we talked about assets. Kind of sewing these three legs of the stool together are going to make it just really more impactful on making sure that loan approval is solid and in place. You want to make sure the documentation goes to the lender so they can verify and validate that information to get it put away. When those things are done, you have a solid loan approval, and now your focus can be on what's next. Making an offer on a house.